What's happening, everyone? This is your host, TARODCAST, and you are now tuned into TARODCAST. For all of the brand new listeners out there listening to our show for the very first time, welcome. And for all of you returning listeners coming back for another spectacular dose of TARODCAST conversation, welcome back. Now, here at TARODCAST, you can take everything we say with a grain of salt. We simply just want to add some flavor to your meal. So if we're doing that, then we are doing our job. Today's episode is actually inspired by a conversation that my wife and I had, and we were just talking about the history of us as Black Americans and how we treat one another, especially when it comes to how we view our white counterparts. And so, without further ado, today's topic is Lego towers, the ball and the crane. This is TARODCAST. Let's get it. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of TARODCAST. Again, I'm your host, TARODCAST, and this topic is one that, for me, it strikes so many chords. And I remember the night me and my wife were talking about things in this same subject line, and this analogy, the Lego tower, the ball, and the crane, like this analogy just popping into my head and it making so much sense because, and also with good reason, over the last literal decade, we've seen so many things that have happened to not just us as Black Americans, but people of color all over the place. And so many things have us looking in all these different directions and instilling, honestly, with a certain level of justification, instilling a fear and a paranoia and enhancing trauma within us. And I want to talk about what it is that we also do to our very own with these same things coursing throughout our bodies and coursing throughout our veins, and honestly how a lot of us are even destroying each other based off of this fear. And so before we get into that conversation, as you already know, we have to take care of our house cleaning details. Honestly, I feel like I'm gonna get a shirt made that says house cleaning because I feel like I have coined this phrase. Maybe I need to trademark it, I don't know, but I am going to put this on a t-shirt. Maybe I'll run a contest if there are any graphic designers out there who wants to take a spin on the house cleaning premise, even though it was a mistake that I made a long time ago. In typical TARODCAST fashion, we just held on to it because it feels like it is us. It feels unique, house cleaning, house keeping, house cleeping. I don't know. Anyway, I'll figure that out later. Let's go ahead and take care of those details. So, if you would like to take our show with you on the go, just know that we are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, Spreaker, Podchaser, Castbox, Podcast Addict, iHeartRadio, Deezer, and YouTube. You can also find TARODCAST on Throne, which is a free live messaging application that allows us here at TARODCAST to exclusively reach our listeners. Make sure to sign up if you'd like to keep the conversations going after the episode. If you're looking for natural oils for ultimate hydration and care for your hair and skin, hit up The Resilient Lotus at www.theresilientlotus.com. Use promo code TARODCAST to also receive a discount on your purchase. If you are a lover of authentic, chunky salsas and the most delicious birria tacos and birria pizzas in Oklahoma City, make sure to reach out to Morenitas Salsitas at www.crtn-t.com/Morenitas-Salsitas. And last but not least, if you are in the market for an affordable graphic designer to create your next logo, flyer, album cover, or animated video, check out at Rose Graphism. That's ROZAYGRAPHISM on Instagram. All this information, as always, will be in our episode notes. All right, y'all. So I know y'all heard some meowing in the background. If y'all don't know, or if y'all haven't been keeping up, we have a cat, and that cat's name is Jingle. And she's over here just doing her little cat thing, prowling around, meowing, headbutting me for food, all different kinds of things, jumping on things, the things that cats do. So if you hear a little bit of background noise, it's my cat, I promise. And now she's over here trying to eat at my feet. Well, not eating, but smelling. And I took a shower, okay? I took a shower. I should be good. But anyway, let's go ahead and go into the topic. So the first thing that I want to talk about is Legos. And if you were a kid at any time, in the 90s, the 80s, hell, even the beginning of the 2000s, then you're probably familiar with these little blocks. Now, Legos are building blocks, and they are some of the coolest, some of the most diverse little building blocks that a kid or even an adult could ever get their hands on. And they have been used to create all kinds of things. Like, I know for me, when I was a kid, I got this big tub full of Lego blocks, and I used to build so many things. I remember I used to take little marbles or little plastic balls and make little mazes out of my Legos and tilt the little mazes I would make so that way the little ball could traverse a path that I created from one side to the next. And that was something that for me, it gave me so much enjoyment. It gave me so much pride because I built this. And I remember I would also build little robots and I would also make little sculptures and whatnot. And I remember even when I think Lego came out with Bionicle. I don't know if y'all remember Bionicle, but these were these little robots. And I remember even McDonald's had some Bionicle toys one time, but they were little robots that had little systems to where they can launch weapons, and they had little movements. You can make their legs kick and their arms throw, and they could twist and all these things. And I remember that used to be huge, but they were all part of Legos. And Legos have really grown to become a craft for a lot of people. And I remember before people really started taking Legos seriously, I know for the kids, there was even a subsection of Legos called Lego Duplo. And those Lego pieces were bigger blocks. They came also in a lot of variety as well, but they were more child friendly, and they gave children the ability to build things that didn't necessarily involve all of the smaller pieces. And I feel like because of that, like the kids who even grew up with the Duplo blocks graduated to the actual Lego blocks, because they're, now you can go inside of a Walmart or a Target and you can see full sets of Legos that have themes like Star Wars and Jurassic Park, and I think even Super Mario has some. I think Pokemon has entered the Lego arena, and there are so many different types of Lego sets now to where if you want to build like a massive diorama of Lego set pieces. You could. And there are people who do that. They will build them, they will have them on display in their house. And honestly, they're actually really cool to see. And it's become such a worldwide trend that Legos have even gone into the movie sector and even the video game sector. Like there's the Lego movie, there's Lego Batman, there's Lego Harry Potter, there's all these different Lego themed pieces of media, and it's all of it's really cool. Like I when I look at these, the kid in me just jumps for joy because I'm literally seeing Legos come to life. And if you had any type of imagination growing up, I hope that most of you have. I know for a lot of us, imagination was not necessarily a luxury that we could afford, depending on where and how you grew up, especially if there were certain people around you that didn't necessarily value imagination. But when I see these things, even in my adult life, it touches on the heartstrings of the inner child within me, seeing literal toys come to life. Like the Lego movie is still one of my favorite movies to this day, and I have to space it out so that way it doesn't get old to me. It retains its magic. And I don't know, it's so awesome just seeing these little cupped hands and these static faces and, you know, these blocky movements doing all these different things and engaging in these built atmospheres. It's I don't know, I feel like what Legos have become now, it's more like a culture. It's more akin to a culture, a lifestyle even. And the reason why I say this is because there was even a show called Lego Masters, and this had grown people from the ages of 20 all the way up to people in their 60s competing to build the best Lego sets, the most dynamic, colorful, all-encompassing, engaging Lego sets for a cash prize and the title of being a Lego master or a master builder. And this TV show was so cool. It was really, really cool because you're seeing these people who are lighting up at all these different things that they are able to create from their own imagination and doing it with the skill and the precision of an adult, but the wide-eyed wonderment of a child. And for me, just watching that, it was such a cool show. Me and my wife would just watch it every week when it would come on because it was just that good. You would see people who understood the assignment, you would see people who didn't understand the assignment, and they were all judged accordingly. But the fact that Legos have become such a pinnacle of people's lives to the point to where they want to build things out of Legos, to me that speaks to what the inner child can do if it remains alive, if it remains engaged. And I don't know, to me, that seeing things like that just really, really bring me happiness, because if you really think about it, people have made entire sculptures and landscapes and hell, even working machines using Legos. There's so many types of pieces, and because they all come in different shapes and colors and lengths and widths and all these different types of things, the level of diversity of which you can use Legos to create something, to bring something to life, it continues to remain endless. The possibilities are endless. And when I think about that, I also liken us as people to Legos, because as we go through our lives, we are finding the pieces that build us up into who we will eventually be remembered as. If you've gone into a Lego store in your local mall or Legoland or whatever, you will see that they have all kinds of pieces sorted out by color and shape and just all the different little aspects that Legos can be sorted in. And you can go and you can pick out piece by piece what you need, what you want. They've got sets in there as well, but it's gotten to the point where now it's become its own monster, to where now they have stores dedicated to the love of Legos. And I feel like even walking in, I've walked into one before and I was just like, wow, I was blown away. Because it's like the Apple store of building blocks. And I did not expect for a childhood toy to receive the amount of pomp and circumstance that it has garnered over the last 10 to 15 years. Like it's really cool to see. And when I think about who we are as people, as we continue to build ourselves up, as we continue to have these experiences and the things that make us who we are, and the things that will allow us to be remembered for who we are when we pass on, these are the things that, to me, they're like the Lego pieces in our lives, because so many things shape us and build us into the structures that we are, piece by piece. Every experience that we have, from childhood all the way up to where we are now, it provides a piece of us that plays a role in our bigger foundation. Even things like trauma even plays a role into how we view the world, how we view one another, how we view ourselves. Love gives us those feelings that carry us through, especially even in the toughest times. And I remember watching WandaVision. There was a very poignant line that Vision said, and it's a spoiler if you haven't watched it. So if you haven't watched it, pause the podcast now, go watch the series, and then come back. But there's a line that Vision said in WandaVision, and it was probably one of the breakout lines. People are probably getting it tattooed and stuff like that, and with good reason, because it was really good. Like, the Marvel screenwriters, whoever is doing the writing for these shows, like, y'all are killing it. But Vision said, "What is grief if not love persevering?" Now that line right there, that really sticks. If you think about it, if you take time to break down what that actually means, it's ultimately correct. I mean, the love that we have for people, especially if we lose someone, that love is something that it makes us break down all the way into our deepest, most passionate, most vulnerable emotions. And these emotions are centered around how we feel about someone. Again, another piece that makes us who we are. Even when it comes to our childhood and the things that we're learning, the things that are basically becoming the foundations for who we are going to be as adults, our childhood contains those pieces that build us up into the structure of adulthood. Heartbreak, the crushing, soul-caving feeling that we have when our heart is broken in any capacity, whether it's by a family member, by someone that is our friend or thought was our friend, or a romantic partner, or someone that we trusted, or even something crazy happening at a job, or somebody that you thought had your back and they turned out to be a fraud. The heartbreak that comes with that changes us. It makes us more aware. It makes us more shifty when it comes to looking at people's actions. And those are pieces that build us up. Giving life, having a child, bearing witness to a child being born. I know for me, that's a piece of my life that I will never forget. It has given me so much more respect for the entire process of delivering a child, just being able to see that firsthand. Experiencing death, seeing it on a level where whether you are or you aren't ready for it, it sticks with you. It cements a memory inside of you. And those things are very hard to forget. And in so many ways we experience this, whether it's at home or randomly or in the military, in the line of fire or whatever the case may be. Seeing that, experiencing that, witnessing that also stays with you. And honestly, all of these things are pieces that play their role as the literal building blocks that shape our path, our relationships, our family life, our successes, and ultimately our soul. So for us, we are the sum of the Lego block parts. We are the sum of that. As we continue going through life, we're adding pieces to our structure. We are continuing to build ourselves higher and higher. And so I see a lot of us like Lego towers as people, made of various colors and blocks that have various shapes and designs and structural integrity, and because of that, I see us continuing to grow and evolve just as the world does as well. But even in that process, there is also one thing that I have grown to recognize. And I'm talking specifically about how we as Black Americans view white Americans as we are building ourselves up as Lego towers. Because a lot of us see white Americans based on our shared history in this country, which I need to do another episode on. But we see them as a wrecking ball on a crawler crane. And we're going to talk about that right after the break. So get your water, get your wine, get your beer, get your fruit juice, get your green tea. Go ahead and take you a drink, stay hydrated, and we will be right back. This is TARODCAST. Yo, what's good, everyone? This is your host of TARODCAST, Tarod Rashawn, and I just want to welcome you to the commercial break. Now, you already know what time it is. It's hydration time. Get some high-quality H2O in your system now. Got a few things I'd like to go over. First, to all of our new and returning listeners, thank you so much for your ear and your time. To all of our Patreon supporters, I just want you to know that we are not able to do this without your direct support. So the biggest, dopest TARODCAST thank you goes out to you. If you're listening in and you're thinking about becoming part of the TARODCAST Patreon family, we'd love to have you. You can find us at www.patreon.com/TARODCAST. Now on Patreon, we have 3 tiers of support. a $2 tier, a $3 tier, and lastly, a $6 tier. Each tier comes with its own set of unique perks, so if you find one that fits you, sign up. For us, the main thing is keeping our subscription prices affordable. We know that you work hard for your money, and if you choose to support TARODCAST this way, we truly want to make it worth your time. To find out more about our Patreon and the perks with each tier, visit www.patreon.com/TARODCAST. We've got it all laid out for you. Also, we've got a merchandise store. Pick up some tees, hoodies, leggings, and more at forevercertain.redbubble.com. All proceeds go right back into the TARODCAST podcast and allow us to keep making high quality content for people just like you. For our listeners out there who would like to support us in a non-monetary way, we'd love that too. Share our show with people you know. Also, share us on your social media. And if your favorite TARODCAST streaming service allows you to rate and review our show and you're loving what you're hearing, take some time and leave us a 5-star review. Ratings and reviews are what set us apart from other podcasts and also helps us to recommend our podcast to other listeners we otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to reach. Lastly, if you'd like to reach out to us directly, email us at TARODCAST@CRTN-T.com. That's TARODCAST@CRTN-T.com. All of this information can always be found in our episode notes, so make sure to check there if you forget any of the information we just went over. Once again, thank you all so much, and let's get back to the program. All right, y'all, we are back. This is TARODCAST, and now we are going to talk about the wrecking ball and the crawler crane. Now, the reason why I use this example because, well, most of us in our lifetime have probably seen a building being demolished, either by a controlled explosive or, more popularly, by a wrecking ball. And most wrecking balls, I actually did a little bit of research on this, but most wrecking balls, in order to work properly, they have to be hoisted into the air by a crawler crane. Which, if you don't know what a crawler crane is, it is a tractor with treads like a tank, and it also has a very, very long neck that holds the big, sometimes 11,000 pound ball, wrecking ball of compressed steel. And this crane will lower the wrecking ball to a certain, or descend the wrecking ball to a certain height, and when it swings, it picks up velocity because of the weight of it. And when it swung in one direction, the wrecking ball rears back and then swings in the opposite direction like a pendulum and destroys things. And oftentimes, if a wrecking ball, and I don't really see this happen much, but if a wrecking ball, if left unchecked while it's swinging and crashing into things, it can cause more destruction than when it's handled with intention. Now, I want to talk about this because our history in this country has shown that most of us have a reason to view white people as a wrecking ball. Because when it comes to our history in this world, and really not even just in this country, I can only speak for our history in this country because I am an American. But history has shown us that the Eurocentric white person has played a significant role into shaping how this world works. And I know if you've watched Black Panther, we all have, we gained the term colonizers, and we have used this term very, very loosely, but yet with purpose, because when we read about world history, we see a lot of colonization happening, especially when it comes to places like Africa, the motherland, the birthplace of life for the entire world. And we see what has happened when it comes to those who are of European descent looking for resources and pillaging resources from the continent of Africa. And we also look at and observe the effects of religion and how even religion was used in not only continents like Africa and the countries within, but even the United States as well, as a method to subdue and tame anyone who is deemed black or has heavy melanin deposits in their skin. And we still even see it today, to be quite honest, because I think it'd be fair to say that 95% of black Americans have been or still are incredibly religious and incredibly traditional in the religious sense. And these types of, if you want to call it culture, these types of tradition, these are things that stem from the involvement of white people in our lives directly. And even with that, we can think about things like slavery, because again, I do know that on the continent of Africa, there were tribes of people that also enslaved other tribes of people. But when it came to how slavery was brought over into the U.S., these were, again, people who were fleeing from the British monarchy, who wanted free labor, who wanted to make money without having to lift a finger. And these were people who used us as property, used us as playthings, used us as examples to one another for what could happen if we got out of line. And so when slavery happened in this country, this was something that stripped and destroyed and demolished who we were, to the point where we forgot our actual lineage. We forgot our actual culture. And it's not really that we forgot. It was just stripped away to the point that we had to assimilate, because trying to remember who we were could get us persecuted. And so there's a void there now. There's a void where culture should be. There's a void where pride should be. There's a void where language should be and practices. There's a void there, all in the name of assimilation. And even after slavery was abolished on Juneteenth, we now entered into a realm of segregation. And even here, our lives were being managed by hate. They were being managed by fear. And they were being managed by the false narratives of us being innately destructive and being innately hypersexual, us lacking intelligence, to the point where the narratives that were created by people who did not look like us also drove the fear of us. And even though we had no control over what white Americans of that time were saying and thinking about us, we were still forced to live underneath that as if it were an actual reality, to the point where now it's become a lot of us. It has become a lot of us. The things that were said about us, the things that were thought about us, have now become a lot of us. And I find that to be incredibly ironic. You know what I mean? Because now we have terms like the man. And when it comes to the man, this is the thought of a white overlord with marionette strings who is basically dangling us like, I believe it was NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys. It was one of those, but dangling us like puppets, lifting our arms, lifting our legs, moving us here and there, having direct control over what we can and can't do. And for a long time in our history, it was like that. I'm not going to pretend that it wasn't. Because when it came to the fear that white people put within themselves about us, that same fear led to how we were treated during the days of Jim Crow, during the days of even modern cinema growing and evolving, during the days of literature being written, featuring us, and stories being written about us. The fears that a lot of white Americans had, especially when it came to their fear of us rising up and making them pay for the history that they played a brutal part in shaping, it led them to react violently, to react out of hate, to be more destructive than we ever thought to be. And the thing is, it's funny how that works, because you're literally becoming your own worst fear. And that's honestly that's a part of what I believe even, hate groups like the KKK are founded on. Becoming what you fear the most. I know in many, many situations, we look at stories like these as cautionary tales of people who were so cowardly, who were so afraid, who were so apprehensive, that the very fears that they held inside of them became them. And then when it comes to people like us, we're just like, what the hell are you doing? You said this about us. We didn't say this. But again, I just find that the whole juxtaposition of us now becoming what they thought we would be, to me, it's hilarious. It is hilarious, because it's just like, wow, it actually worked. It was repeated so much and so long that it actually worked. And a lot of us have become what they thought we were innately, when at that time, that wasn't who we were. Now, we can also say that white people, especially those on the liberal side of life, have just started to dig deeper into the unspoken histories that some of their families have hidden in their vaults. But yet, the road to hell is still paved with good intentions. Because now I want to talk about how attitudes towards us have continued to denigrate and downplay who we are. Because I feel like now there is a generalized acceptance of what a general Black American is thought to be. And when I say this, what I'm talking about is the stereotypes that have been perpetuated for decades. The things that probably describe a good 80 to 90% of us, but yet leave out the other 10 to 20% that don't subscribe to those stereotypes. Again, I understand it's the majority. The majority of us are going to more than likely act the same. But because of that, there is an expectation that now, especially on the white liberal side, there is an expectation that when encountering a Black American, you can expect that they're going to act a certain way. They're going to speak a certain way. They're going to have certain mannerisms. And that even leads into the whole adoption of African American vernacular English as a language. Now we just really need to talk about this, because honestly, I understand. I mean, you can call it Ebonics, you can call it ghetto Black speak. I've heard all kinds of names, but the more official, and I'm putting this in quotes, the more official sounding title is African American Vernacular English, or AAVE. And this is something that bothers me, because honestly, this is a representation of how a lot of us speak when it comes to a lower socioeconomic level, where the priority is not necessarily placed on education, but placed on survival. And because of this, there isn't much room for teaching our children and engaging with one another on a level that allows us to speak in a way that's very clear. Now, you can also say that there are certain phrases and colloquialisms and all types of things that we have made up, and some of them are cool, some of them are cringy. I still can't stand the whole word thought, because it just grinds my gears when I hear that, because it's stupid. But again, I get it, and we come up with these things, and now you're starting to see some of them being interpreted as, oh, that's just how they speak. And that's not all of us. Again, I can understand, the majority, I understand, right? But that's not all of us. And so looking at us with that generalized mindset, it does more harm to us than good. And also seeing us as perpetual victims and lacking in basic intelligence. I remember watching a video a few years ago, and I may have talked about this on a prior episode, but it dealt with white people, or more so white liberals, and their thoughts on Black Americans, and they were just victimizing us, like, oh, I feel so sorry for them, and the fact that they don't have access to the same things, the same education, the same resources and different things like that. And this interviewer was interviewing a lot of white people who are saying a lot of the same things, and then they interviewed some Black people, because they were also talking about voter registration as well. This video was more so tied to voting and things like that, and these white people just really believed that we did not know how to go and get a voter registration. And they were just tying it to all of these reasons that tied into our socioeconomic status, and how that's believed to be everyone, like everybody's in the same neighborhood, everybody's in the same boat, and the lack of education, as if we don't get out anywhere to know the city. And when the interviewer went and talked to Black people, they were like, I mean, I could go over here to the DMV, it's right around the corner on such and such street. And that was such a huge revelation to me, because here we are, we've seen, and we typically fear the worst things that we've seen regarding white people and their views and their treatment towards us. But even on this side as well, the victimization, the fact that they believe that we don't know what we're doing, like we're just out here lost and aimless. Like that blew my mind, because like every black person that interviewer went and talked to, they were like, yeah, you just go over here to the DMV, it's on such and such street. Yeah, I got my voter registration, I got my license, you know, I know what I need to take to the polls in order for me to cast my vote. And I was just like, wow, you know, because again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And a lot of the white liberal people that this interviewer was talking to saw us as a monolith. I know we hate that word. I know we like to say that we're not a monolith. Newsflash, the majority of us are. But at the same time, seeing that and knowing that even me as a black man, I know how to move around. I know how to get around town. I know how to conduct myself and handle certain situations. I know how to play the customer service role. I know how to, you know, turn things on and off in order to, you know, make sure I can survive, you know. It's crazy to think that so many people, even now, it's like the whole mindset has shifted. It's switched. And now white people are overcompensating for our shared history in the United States. And you know what? When me and my wife talked about this, it's like, you know what? Let them do it. Let them do it. You be out there on the front line instead of me. You know, you use your body as a human shield. If that's what you want to do, then do it. I'm not going to stop you. But at the same time, do not mistake my inherent value as something that has to be saved. Get rid of the savior complex. I am a person. And even this behavior is destructive. This behavior is counterproductive. I am a person just like you. I'm not a child. Nowadays, I know how to get the exact same resources that you have access to. Because now things have changed to a degree to where we all have access to the same things now. So when it comes to those views of us, there is a lot of overcompensation that is happening now. That is also to our detriment. For a lot of us, white people are still that wrecking ball on the crawler crane. And because of our history, because of our trauma, because of our paranoia, we want to keep everyone who looks like us on the same level. I get it. We want to be a herd. The herd has to look out for each other. But that also does nothing but keep us scrambling over one another. Under the guise of protection, under the guise of preservation. But in reality, all that we're doing is perpetuating ignorant fear of people who now have very little to do with our direct existence. Think about that. Before, and honestly, when I say before, I'm not talking about 200 something years ago. I'm talking about the 60s, you know, before. White American people were heavily integrated in our lives to the point where we had to drink from separate water fountains, go into separate bathrooms, sit on separate seats in the bus. But now we have people who look like us, who can build water fountains, who own their own restrooms and own their own public spaces that house the restroom. We have black people who have transportation to take other black people here and there. And now we've gotten to a point to where when we talk about and when we think about a white person's direct involvement with our life, it's very, very minuscule when you really think about it. But, and also with justifiable reason, we still have that fear lingering over us. We are the Lego tower in this situation. And our fear, our concern, our trauma when it comes to white American people has transformed itself into the wrecking ball. And we're going to talk about why these two images, when they came into my brain, make sense, and how we are destroying one another through that fear. So if you still have your water close by, wine, juice, beer, tea, take another drink, keep on being hydrated, and we will be right back. This is TARODCAST. All right, y'all, and we are back. We are here at TARODCAST, and we're going to tie everything together that we have been talking about today. So, just to recap, the Lego Tower. The Lego Tower is you and me. We are every piece that makes us who we are. We are every single little piece that we've chosen to represent us as this grand structure that we call ourselves, that we call our soul, that we call our character. And the wrecking ball and the crawler crane are some of the fears that have been instilled in us because of our history in this country and the things that were passed down and taught to us, and even for a lot of us, the direct and indirect experiences we've had with people who are white Americans. And so I want to talk about the actual meaning behind this particular phrase, this imagery that I came up with, because for many of us, our lives are lived with the anticipation that white people are going to literally show up at our doorstep and single-handedly play a direct role in ruining our very lives from where they stand at our hypothetical doorstep. For some of us, especially since things like police brutality and police mistreatment has hit us harder in the last 10 years. And not even just police, but mistreatment from regular white people in general. It's hit us so hard. It's hit us harder in recent times. And because of that, I fully understand how that generalized fear in us is valid. I understand the root of why that fear permeates throughout so many of us on a daily basis. This country in particular has shown us that things like racism, prejudice, bigotry, and discrimination are deeply rooted and integrated into its veins. Now, granted, nowadays, these things have taken a more subtle and masked approach. But the truth of the matter is that it still exists. And because it exists, it is something that for a lot of us, if you grew up black like I did, if you went to a black school, if you had black family members, black friends, you have heard at some point the actual cruel history of our existence here. You have probably also seen the way that we have been treated, which fuels the conversations about how we view the vast majority of white people. However, the reality now, like right now, like as of today, is that we have grown so much to try and anticipate direct white interference so much that now our fears of what white people could potentially do have transformed into the severe limitation of what we will allow ourselves and others who look like us to do. And that's where this imagery comes into play. Because we, in our lives, in our black lives, we are the Lego tower, right? We are built up of all these pieces. We're built up of experiences and trauma and heartbreak and love and life and betrayal and fear and all these different things that make us who we are, that play the pivotal role in how we look at life. And the reality of us as we are building this tall Lego tower that sums up our lives, white people now, they are a stranded crawler crane and wrecking ball that sits next to our Lego tower. Think about this, because you can drive almost anywhere in a city, especially if there's major construction going on. You can drive almost anywhere in a site that has a lot of construction. You will see tractors that are unmanned. You will see bulldozers that are unmanned. You will see crawler cranes and wrecking balls that are unmanned all the time. And that unmanned crawler crane with the wrecking ball attached, that is our fear of what white people could potentially do now. You know what? Yeah, it was driven up there. Yeah, it was placed right there in plain sight, next to the very Lego tower that you are. History has shown us that people will man this crawler crane, and they will swing this wrecking ball, and they will destroy the very towers that we have built up piece by piece. I will never deny that this has happened numerous times in our history. It is a fact. It is a fact that every time in our history, as we fought for equality, and we fought for equity, and we fought for property, we fought for the right to be, there have been many instances that showed us direct opposition from white Americans based on their fears of us. Their fears based on the things that they told themselves about us that were not true, which in turn became them. And they acted against us based on those fears. We look at the crawler crane. We look at who's operating that during those times. And yes, they swung the wrecking ball and knocked down the very towers that we were leaning on to take us to a better place, to take us to a more desirable, equal, equitable, peaceful place. They destroyed them. They did. I will never deny that. Because, recently I watched Judas and the Black Messiah. And I know that the story of Chairman Fred-Hampton is one of many stories, alongside people like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., of people who pose such a threat, a perceived threat, that the fear of many white Americans consumed them to the point where everything they thought that we were going to do, everything that they thought that we were, they ended up not only becoming, but they mutated it. And through that mutation, it became cancerous to the point where they felt it justified to eradicate people that they feared because they were scared. They were afraid. And nowadays, we live in the shadow of that. We live literally building ourselves up next to an unmanned crawler crane with a wrecking ball attached. And the thing is, the reason why I called us a Lego tower is because we have gotten to a point where we are now undoing each other out of fear of what we anticipate that wrecking ball to do. Because the thing about Lego blocks is that just as easily as you can use them to build something magnificent, just as easily can you tear it down. And many of our fears about what that wrecking ball could do are taking the form of us removing pieces of our own tower. Removing pieces based out of fear. The very fabric of who we are. Every piece that has gotten us to a certain point, we have allowed other people to remove pieces of that tower that makes us who we are, because they are staring at an unmanned crawler crane with a wrecking ball attached. Again, I am not going to deny the fact that history has clearly and blatantly showed us that when it came to race relations in this country, a lot of white people were manning these cranes with wrecking balls attached, and they were swinging them wildly because that is what their fear drove them to do. And honestly, a lot of them are still afraid because, again, like I said, so many things are subtle, so many things are masked nowadays, to where even fear comes out in political settings, in hospitals, in police interactions, with the neighborhood watch vigilantism. It comes out in those avenues. Yes, that is very real. But for a lot of us, A lot of us, especially those of us who grew up in the hood, until we actually get out, or if we have gotten out, very seldom did we have interactions directly with white people. And even with that, we were given the fear very early on. And honestly, when it comes to how we put ourselves in certain places, we can do a lot better. We could actually be taking time to restructure ourselves and build more Lego towers for one another, with one another. So that way we could have a colorful cityscape that nobody can touch. But the ghost of that crawler crane and that wrecking ball, that abandoned crawler crane and wrecking ball sitting next to the Lego tower of our lives, has created an atmosphere where we will do everything we can to make sure those of us who look like us don't get too high, don't get too successful, because we fear when those of us who look like us are doing better than the majority of us. And in many cases, yeah, a lot of us forget where we come from. A lot of people, a lot of us, we do that. We do that. Because there's that part of us that wants what we believe they have, what history has shown us that they have. So we look to them as a standard. So yeah, there's a lot of people who, if they get big and famous or rich or whatever, yeah, they leave everybody behind. Because they equate their version of success with what white people tend to have, because their history is different from ours. So we continue to live in the shadow of this crawler crane and wrecking ball. And because of that, we are undoing ourselves. We criticize ourselves so hard. We denigrate one another on the most superficial levels. We pick one another apart to a point where it is so hard to associate with the majority of us. I remember one instance that just popped into my head right now, where people were talking about Gabby Douglas, an Olympic gold medalist, young black woman. We were taking pieces of her Lego tower because she couldn't Dougie, because her hair wasn't all the way done. This young woman is an Olympian, and here we are making it a pastime to tear her down. And we do it to each other. Some of us look for reasons to do it to each other. Some of us look for reasons to take off pieces from the very Lego towers we are building for ourselves. Some of us, upon meeting, are scanning to see if there's anything that you could potentially use as ammo later if the relationship turns sour. Because deep down inside, we don't feel like we're good enough. We don't feel like we're pretty or we're handsome enough. And so we're looking at someone, we are listening intently for things that we could potentially use against them. We're keeping tallies. So that way, if we feel that their Lego tower is being built too high, we can tear them down. And in the same breath, make it as if it is only white people doing it. Because we're also looking at that abandoned crane and wrecking ball. Like, I really want y'all to get this. Because that is what so many of us are doing. And it's unfair. It is unfair. I will never understand why we have allowed ourselves to also become what we fear. And to project those fears onto those of us who actually want to do something good in this world. The fact that we have such a lack of understanding, a lack of empathy, that if something appears different, even in the slightest, from the masses, we are so quick to offer our flawed commentary, to treat it like it's a roast, to nitpick at every little thing, especially if it doesn't apply to you. If it doesn't apply to you, it just doesn't apply to the whole black community, huh? I saw this picture on Twitter. It was a black woman who was talking about how I'm not attracted to Issa Rae, and this isn't hate, but when it comes to her, you know, I just don't find her attractive. It doesn't mean, you know, this or that, but I don't necessarily like her. I'm not planning on getting hired or working for her or anything like that. And Issa Rae replied, she was like, "You look like me, the fuck?" It showed the picture side by side. And it's like, I get it. You can think whoever is attractive or unattractive or whatever. But we've gotten to a point to where now we've made it a regular pastime to talk about one another. To try and remove a Lego block from the tower that somebody has built for themselves based on their life and their experiences. And it's the saddest thing. It is the saddest thing to watch. Especially coming from a person who wants to spread love and wants to create a village of people that can feel safe. Again, I've done my wrongs. I have. And there's probably still more wrongs that I might do. I don't know. But one thing that I will never do is take time to just go on deliberate rants to tear people down out of jealousy or envy. Character is a different thing. If someone is acting in a way that does not allow for reconciliation, and I'm only talking about my own wrongs. If someone is acting out in such a way to where there could never be a conversation, they go out, they drag my name through the mud based on an interpretation that is not fully realized, one that hasn't been allowed the opportunity to be broken down by both parties in general. That is something I know I can't stand for. And I refuse to have pieces of my tower that I'm building be taken apart based on things like that. Superficial things like that. I'd rather have the conversation. I'd rather get to the point. Because that's the only way we are going to grow and understand one another. But so many of us are taking pieces off of another person's Lego tower because we are so fixated on that abandoned crane wrecking ball. We need to fix that. Because honestly, we are destroying ourselves more than what white people are doing now. Whether or not you believe in Willie Lynch, some people say he was real, others say that he was debunked. But the fact of the matter is, we have become our own enemy. And we do it for the sake of comedy. We do it for the sake of appeasing our own low self-esteem. The only way to get rid of that is to pretend and move as best you can as if this threat does not exist. Because the key part about this example is that that wrecking ball attached to that crawler crane is unmanned. It was left there. The funding for whatever that particular tractor was going to do has dried up, and nobody's come to get it yet. But because we have seen this happen in our lives, we fear that somebody is going to come and man it one day. But there's a lot of things that white people cannot get away with now. There's a lot. We just have to realize that those things will not go unchecked. Because again, that fear is still real. That fear of who they believe we are is still real. But our fear supersedes that. And that's why this abandoned crane and wrecking ball can sit next to a Lego tower of a person who is trying to build themselves up. And we will take pieces off of it because we are afraid and we believe we are justified. We would rather that person building themselves up be back down here with us. You know, this example goes into the whole crabs in the barrel thing. It does. But at the same time, and I remember reading this, a crab's habitat is not a barrel. And a lot of us have forgotten that. So I hope that we can take some time to remember this and understand that we need to be building each other up. That's the only way we're going to make this work. It's the only way we're going to make it out. It's the only way. Add pieces. Add pieces to someone's Lego tower. If you have the power or the means to do so, add to it. Make it stronger. Make the foundation solid. Keep it colorful. Build it to it surpasses the stratosphere. That's what needs to happen. And once that does, we ain't got to worry about nobody else. Because we will fight for ours with strength and courage. And not out of fear. Yes, our history has shown us that they have taken so much. I will never deny that. But now, we can fight back as long as we have each other's back and we build one another up. And that's our show, y'all. That's our show. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate y'all continuing to be a part of this effort and for putting up with my crazy schedule. This conversation is one that when I had it with my wife, it turned on so many light bulbs. It made so much sense. And I hope that I was able to break it down for you all today. Because I truly want us to get to a level where we can look at one another and we can give that head nod. We know what's up. We know that we have every right to be the greatest version of ourselves that we can be. It's like that picture that I see where it's like, two black dudes pointing at each other. It's like, man, bro, you over here killing it. And the other guy's like, man, I'm just out here trying to be like you. That's what we need. That's the energy that we need. Because that is adding pieces to our Lego tower. Forget the wrecking ball. That doesn't exist. That is a ghost. There's no need to hang on to that anymore. Just forget it. And then to all the white people out there, if you're listening and you are a supporter, you want to see us do the best things that we can. Good, great. We love you. Thank you for just caring. But for us, we have to learn to let go of that fear. Because it's going to do nothing but make us turn against our own under the guise of fearing them. So let's build each other up, y'all. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. You all know how to find us. You all know how to support us. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review and also take the conversation to our throne room. Links along with everything else are in our show notes. And wherever you are, whomever you are, I want to always encourage you to be more introspective and vulnerable with yourself. Know who you are, trust in who you are, love who you are. Again, I want to thank you for listening. I've been your host, Tarod Rashawn. This has been another episode of TARODCAST. And as always, I want you to make every effort to find and keep your peace. Till next time.